Chapter 5 The Island Come True. Neverland came back to life now that Peter was almost there. When he was gone, everybody did nothing but wait for him to return. Now things would be back to normal. The Lost Boys looked for Peter, their leader, the pirates looked for the Lost Boys, the Indians looked for the pirates, and the beasts looked for the Indians. Each was out to get the other in a long parade that circled the island. The six lost boys, dressed in bear skins and with their hands upon their daggers, crept through the sugar cane in single file. Toodles, a kind of trusting lad, was in the lead. He was just the one for Tinker Bell's plan of mischief. Next was Nibs, and then came Slightly, who liked to dance to music he played on a whistle. Curly, who always took the blame for things, was fourth, followed by the twins. Nobody is quite sure which is which. The sound of a song entered the thicket as the boys vanished into the gloom. It was the pirates' dreadful song. A vast belay, yo-ho, heave to, a pirating we go, and if we're parted by a shot, we're sure to meet below. The pirates were a villainous group. Keko was in the lead. Behind him was a black man with many names, and after him Tattooed Bill Jukes. Then came Gentleman Starkey, Skylights, and Smee. Although a pirate, Smee was anything but fierce. The others considered him pathetic, mainly because of his sense of fair play was alarming for a pirate. In the midst of them and the rest of the crew was the most villainous of them all, the sworn enemy of Peter Pan, Captain Hook. Trailing the pirates were the Indians, carrying tomahawks and knives. In the lead was the great big little panther, his belt filled with many scalps. Bringing up the rear, where the danger was greatest, was Tiger Lily, the proud and beautiful Indian princess. The Indians disappeared like shadows without making a sound. Behind the Indians came the man-eating lions and tigers and bears with their tongues hanging out. They also vanished into the gloom. And last of all, in a parade that nobody could see all at once, was a gigantic crocodile. It was hungry, too, but the meal it had in mind was quite special. The boys grew tired and stopped to rest not far from their underground home. "I wish Peter would come back," Toodles said. "Maybe he can tell us more about Cinderella." Toodles believed his mother was like Cinderella. The only time the boys could talk about mothers was when Peter was away. Peter hated talk of mothers. Toodles stopped at the sound of far-off singing. It was the grim song they knew too well. Yo-ho-ho, the pirate life, the flag of skull and bones, a merry hour, a hempen rope, and hey for Davy Jones. Before the song died away, the boys vanished into their underground home faster than rabbits down their own holes. The entrances were 7 hollow trees known only to the boys. Hook had searched for the underground home for many moons, and so far had not found it, but this time Nibs was slow in hiding. The pirates entered the clearing just as he disappeared into the trees. Starkey spied him. He pulled out his pistol to fire, but Hook's iron claw grabbed his shoulder. "Put away that pistol," Hook bellowed. "But it was one of those boys you hate," Starkey said. "I could have shot him easily." "And bring those Indians down on us?" Hook said, looking over his shoulder. "Do you want to lose your scalp?" Hook rubbed his chin with his good hand. "Besides," he continued, "that was only one. I want all 7. He pointed to the woods with his hook. "Now find them!" The pirates scurried into the woods, leaving only Smee and Captain Hook behind. Hook followed them with his eyes. "Most of all, I want their leader. Peter Pan," he said to Smee. "He's the one who cut off my hand." He raised his hook threateningly. "I want to shake his hand with this," he growled, slicing the air with the shiny metal claw. He frowned. "Peter threw my arm to a passing crocodile," he said with a painful wince. "I've often wondered about your fear of crocodiles," Smee said. Hook glared at him. "Not crocodiles," he said. "Just the one that ate my hand. He liked it so much he's been following me ever since, hoping to dine on the other." He glared at Smee. "That's why I want Peter Pan." Hook sat down on a large mushroom with a nervous laugh. "That croc would have had me by now if he hadn't accidentally swallowed a clock," he said. "Now when I hear that clock inside him ticking, I run before he can get me." "What will happen when the clock runs down?" Smee asked. "That's what haunts me," Hook said fearfully. Suddenly he jumped up. He put his hand on his mushroom he'd been sitting on. "This seat is hot," he said. The two pirates studied the strange mushroom and then pulled it out of the ground. Smoke poured from the hole where the mushroom had been. Odds, bobs, hammer, and tongs, I'm burning, Hook exclaimed. The pirates looked at each other. A chimney, they cried. They dropped to their knees. Voices rose up the chimney along with the smoke. It was the lost boys speaking without fear in the safety of their underground home. Hook glanced around. He saw the 7 trees with entrance holes. His mouth curled into a sinister smile. He tapped his nose with his hook. Did you hear them, Smee? He whispered. They said Peter's not home. His smile twisted more sharply than ever. It's time to begin my plan, he hissed. We'll return to the ship. There I'll bake a thick cake covered with green sugar. I'll put it on the shore of the mermaids' lagoon. The boys will find it when they go there to swim and play with the mermaids. They'll eat the cake because they have no mother to tell them it's dangerous to eat rich cake. And then, he stopped to savor what would happen next. And then they will die. Wonderful, Hook chortled. It's a perfect plan. Hook leaped into the air with glee. He opened his mouth to sing, but stopped before he could utter a note. Another sound froze him in place. It was a steady tick, tick, tick that grew closer with each tick. That crocodile, Hook screamed just before he disappeared into the woods with a terrified Smee right behind. The crocodile slithered through the clearing with a strange smile on its face, but did not stop. It stayed on Hook's trail no matter where it led. The boys emerged into the open as Nibs raced towards them, pursued by a pack of wolves. Save me, Nibs screamed as he fell to the ground. What can we do without Peter? One of the boys asked. Do what Peter would do, shouted another. Look at the wolves through your legs. The boys bent over and looked through their legs at the wolf pack. In an instant, the wolves turned and fled. Nibs got to his feet. He looked at his companions with wide eyes. I have seen a wonderful thing, he said in a voice filled with awe. It was a great white bird, and it's coming here. He pointed to the air. See? As he spoke, a figure high in the sky descended toward the group of lost boys. Soon it was directly overhead. It was Wendy, crying because she was lost. Poor Wendy, she cried softly. Poor Wendy. It's a Wendy bird, Curly said. There are such things, you know. When Wendy was very close, the boys heard another voice. It was Tinker Bell. Like Peter, they could understand her quite well. The jealous little fairy called to the boys. Shoot the Wendy, Tinker Bell said. Peter wants you to shoot the Wendy. The boys always obeyed Peter. Quick, get bows and arrows, one shouted. The boys popped down their tree holes. Toodles stayed behind because he already had his bow and arrows. Quick, Tinker Bell cried. Shoot her now. Toodles loaded his bow. Peter will be so pleased, he said. He fired. Before he could blink, Wendy fluttered to the ground with the arrow in her breast.